Welcome to No Wrong Choices, the podcast that explores the career journeys of accomplished and inspiring people to uncover secrets of success. I'm Larry Samuels, soon to be joined by the other fellas, Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea. For those who might be joining us for the first time, and for those who haven't done this yet, please support No Wrong Choices by following us on your podcasting platform of choice and by giving us a 5-star rating. We also encourage you to join the conversation by connecting with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X by searching for No Wrong Choices or by visiting our website at NoWrongChoices.com. This episode features the founder of Keep in Mind, Inc. and the creator of the Kim Academy, Ellen Belk. Tushar, once again, you have set us up with a great conversation. Therefore, why don't you set up this conversation?
All right, so I've had the opportunity to know Ellen in both her careers, in both of her lives. So our relationship goes back many decades at this point, and I've known her since we worked together at FAN. And when she was at FAN, she was a top flight producer, one of the best people I've known. And, you know, it takes a lot of courage to, walk from the market she was in initially when she was in a smaller market in North Carolina to come to New York and not know a lot of people and to not only, you know, when they say, you know, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, to really become one of the more respected sports producers in New York, and then to say all of a sudden, I'm going to leave that profession behind. I'm going to make an absolute 180, and I'm going to go into healthcare. Going to senior health, going to elder care. And that was a change that a lot of us in the business looked at each other and raised the eyebrow and said, she's got to be crazy. This is not going to work. But I'll tell you, she made it happen. And the story behind it, it's inspiring because it took courage to do that. We talk a lot about courage on this podcast, that sometimes you have to kind of, and I never want to say, I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it myself when I say you never want to leap before you look. This is one of those cases where you leapt before you looked. And that's part of the story for Ellen Belk in this case.
Yeah, I think I think this is a special episode for us because it's different. You know, usually we're chronicling someone's life where they reach a pinnacle of a career and it takes their whole life's journey to get there. And here we have Ellen, who it's really the tale of two careers, right? She reaches the pinnacle at WFAN as an incredible producer and then literally walks away from it. And we really haven't delved into that as a program. So No Wrong Choices is about to dive into something that we haven't talked about before, which is when it's time to make a change, when it's time to do the 180, like you said, T. And it does take a lot of courage. So I'm excited to talk to her. And I'm as interested in the health part of her career as I am in the WFAN part of her career, because they're equally important. And sometimes you never know what's going to fulfill you until you actually get out there and do it. I'm excited to hear her journey.
I completely agree. And with that, here is Ellen Belk. Ellen, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so guys, full disclosure here. I have known Ellen for a long time. And actually in a previous life than what she does now. I actually had the opportunity to work with her for a number of years at WFAN when my career was underway, and I got to meet Ellen and we became very, very good friends. And when she made her career change, I was blown away by how courageous she was. But Ellen, before we get into that portion of the show, Ellen, why don't you give us the elevator pitch as to what you're doing these days?
Well, the mission statement for the Kim Academy is we are elevating the global dementia IQ one student at a time. So I am in my 22nd year of dementia care expertise. Quite frankly, most of that time prior to me starting my consulting company in 2011 was in senior living operations. And so at one point I was the national director of memory care operations for a countrywide, across the USA company, had over 100 buildings in their portfolio. So I have that background, but I really now in my consulting work through Keep in Mind, I specialize in holistic dementia care solutions. And when you hear me say that term holistic, it is more of how can we non-pharma first take care of those that we serve, whether we're family members or professional care providers, those who are living with dementia in a non-pharma way first as first lines of defense. And so my clients tend to be senior living providers, sometimes product developers who are trying to break into the elder care and or dementia care space. So, it's kind of a little bit of I run the gamut, but anyone who's touched by dementia could clearly be a client of Ellen Belk's.
So, Elle, I mean, obviously, like I said, this is not where you started. This is where you ended up. So, I'll ask. So, was this? I mean, I don't think this is where you wanted to end up, but this is where you have, or maybe it is where you wanted to end up. So, I want to go back a little bit to the beginning with you and talk about, you are an athlete. You are an athlete. You were a very good athlete when you were young. Was the notion of being in team sports, hell, being in journalism, was that the goal when you were younger?
Yeah. I always knew. I mean, like, I was a writer. I was writing poems and short stories as a grade school student, and not because my teachers were telling me to do it. I was just a creative writer. I clearly have the gift of gab. Miss Meggers, my third grade teacher, put me in the cloakroom. For those of you who are from the Midwest, you know what the cloakroom was. So I'm sitting in the cloakroom on the third day of third grade because I was too chatty Cathy. So I had that. I had the knack of gab. I had the knack of creative writing, and I did. And my older sister, was in kind of a journalism major. So I knew what the word was as I was growing up. But then also I was also the fifth grade girl that, was on the eighth grade basketball team, freshman, starting on the varsity team in high school. I was 6 feet tall. And, and you guys, I tell people this, and Mrs. Andre, I was taller than I think I said it was either kindergarten or first. I think Mrs. Andre was my first grade teacher. I was taller than her. So I was a tall kid, came from a very athletic family. So yeah, I think I thought journalism, whatever I thought that meant, I continued to write for the school papers. So the writing always kind of was consistent as I was growing up, going through high school and into college. But it was in college where I really got the opportunity to work at the campus college radio station. And of course you write to do that. So I was able to marry at that time. I realized, like, okay, this is a thing. I can talk and write. And let's see where this takes me, and so that's kind of how I got the entree at that time into that.
Okay, so before we go any further, the cloakroom, is that like timeout? Like, what are we?
Thank you.
Oh yeah.
I was going to ask that too.
What is that?
Well, think of a third grade classroom where back in the day where all your desks are facing the front and the chalkboards at the front. The cloakroom was that little space. Again, I grew up in Wisconsin, that where it's like winter 9 months out of the year. So it's that space off to the side that you can egg. There was like two entrances to it, and you hung your boots and your backpacks and whatever. Yeah, Ellen was told, little mini Ellen, who was probably taller than I was probably taller than Miss Meggers actually as well, but I was third day of school, and she made me in front of everybody, Ellen, move your desk into the cloakroom. Yeah, and the rest of the day I could hear her because I could see through the little door that they had, but I was separated from my classmates so I wouldn't disrupt anybody.
That's great. So education-wise, you said you had the gift of the gab. You were a great writer, right? So this is something, maybe journalism, maybe sports journalism, because you have that ilk. You had nothing on your mind about getting into any kind of health-related field, correct?
No, never crossed my mind. Mm-mm.
So sports may be the dream, and if that doesn't work out, I'm going to go into maybe journalism or something like that? Or were you not thinking along those lines?
Really truthfully, I'm a kid and a gal to this day, truthfully, over 50, and I'm still flying by the seat of my pants. I'm not, but as I was maturing, like, again, I had opportunity. As I said, I was a freshman starter on the varsity basketball team in high school. I played at a good high school. My senior year, I ended up transferring to even a better high school because it just worked out for me. It was a better fit at the popular Catholic school in downtown Milwaukee. So I did obviously get a D1 scholarship. I first started at Illinois State, and then I ended up my career at Marquette University, which is where I actually had wanted to go all along because I'm a girl from Milwaukee. I was an Al McGuire, disciple. My dad used to quote him at the dinner table. So yeah, so sports was what got me through because I paid for my education. My parents thanked me well into my 40s for that. But again, along the way, it was really, Larry, when I got my internship at the Milwaukee Brewers, my junior year, that's when I realized that, like you can actually work in sports. You know what I mean? Like the writing, was I going to be a newspaper writer? Maybe. Was I going to find a way to make that? Yeah, but I was just so ensconced in playing basketball and just trying to, win. And sports really, my athleticism and my participation on the team, obviously in college, was really drove a lot of things. It's very time consuming, even in the off season. You're playing 6 days a week, so. But yeah, it was when I got on when I got the opportunity to intern at the Brewers. That's when I networked. I got, started networking with guys at ESPN, started freelancing for them, ABC Golf. So that's when I probably made the mental pivot. Let's see where this takes me,
So start with that then. How did you get the internship? Was that something through Marquette University? Talk about that and how that came about.
Yeah. I had a teacher. I hate myself for always forgetting her name, but she was a teacher. Now remember, I transferred back home to Milwaukee, so it would have been my junior year, and it was my redshirt year. So I took 5 years to get through. I had 4 years of playing. I played 2 years at Illinois State, and then I transferred back home to Milwaukee, and I redshirted my junior year, and I did not travel with the team when they were on the road. So that gave, so I had, some downtime. I did a little side job hustle on the side. But then I had 2 more years. I graduated in 5 years from college, if you will. But so in that junior year, this particular teacher, she made the comment to us literally on the first day of class. It was a media writing class, as a matter of fact, as well. And she was like, listen, if you want to get into the media, if you want a job in this, that, and the other, and you think you're going to be rich, you better get used to eating a lot of macaroni and cheese. I mean, and first of all, I love macaroni and cheese. What kid at 20 doesn't?
What's wrong with that? Sounds fantastic.
I was like, yeah, you act like that's a bad thing. I'm sorry. What's the downside of this? But I knew that she meant that way. I mean, she was hardcore, and I found that to be very refreshing, actually, but it also did not deter me. And so I don't know if I was a favorite student. She obviously knew I played for the team, the women's basketball team. And she was the one that introduced me she's the one that was kind of siphoning through internship opportunities at that time. And she pulled me aside after class and told me, had you thought about doing an internship? This just came in from the Milwaukee Brewers. And that's kind of how it went. And so I was accepted. I ended up sticking that out there for 2 years. I did that for both my redshirt year, and I ended up finding a way to get that done the next year as well. So it really worked out well for me. And I'll let you guys in on a little secret. Back in those days, this would have been like 88, 89, 1988 or 9.
1888 or 89? Thank you.
As opposed to that, yeah.
That would have been really cool.
Yeah. That's a good point. Very good point. My job, my responsibility at that very first time was that I was responsible for making the batting practice warm-up tape. And when I say tape, I mean the cassette tape that went into the tape recorder. Went into the tape recorder up in the press box when the guys came out to, do their batting practice before a game. That was my responsibility. It wasn't, actually. I don't believe it was.
You were a DJ.
I was going to say, so are you sitting in your dorm room, like hitting play and record, like on one track to the next one?
Oh my gosh. No, the good news is I actually got to use the Milwaukee Brewer equipment. So no, they had a little mini studio up in the press box. And I'm saying press box. They had offices up there behind where Euchre and everybody was. Yeah, there was an actual office area, and I was able to use their equipment.
That's great.
So one of your primary responsibilities was to create the batting practice, if I heard that correctly, mixtape for all of the different players. Now, we want to keep going on the journey, but we also can't let that go. So from what I remember, some of the players on that team were Paul Molitor, Robin Yount.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jim Gantner's right, but that's in my
Teddy
head.
Higuera might have been on that team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Maybe.
Teddy was there. By the way, Jim Gantner's daughter went out to be a very good basketball player at the first high school I went to. She became a little local stud herself. But anyway, yeah. No, those are all the names. You're right, Larry. Those are all correct.
So with those people on the squad, and I don't know how many people in our audience are going to remember those folks, but anyway, thinking about those players, Do you have any great mixtape stories, like random songs that were requested that were just totally out there that would make people laugh?
See,
89, huh?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. That
Okay,
is
what was
exactly.
Robin Young's song? What was Robin Young's song?
See, you're putting me on the spot. I literally have no recollection, but I will tell you. So I can't remember. Was it, Tupac Shakur? If that was even, I'm not
no
even
way
sure.
Robin Young is listening to Tupac Shakur.
No, but was it, whoever, whatever, Billy Idol? I don't remember, but who anybody's was. But what I will tell you, and I don't even know how they did it before I got there. I don't know if this had ever been done. I didn't ask it. I don't remember, or I just know I was assigned that task. So I just go down onto the field. Again, I was there in not only on game days, but I was there during the week too, doing other stuff for the Brewers. And that I would just go down on the field and ask the guys hey, Robin, hey, Paul, this is who I am. I'm the new intern. This is what I'm responsible for. What song do you want to hear? And I kind of remember my boss at the time being like, that was, I think she thought I was just going to pick stuff. I took it upon I don't know if that's what she wanted me to do, but I took it upon myself to go down and ask them, what do you want? And that's
a real go-getter.
I mean, there you go. That's what happened. And so I apologize to Shar. I absolutely cannot remember what Robin Yount's batting practice warm-up was.
Well, if you had any wherewithal, you would have kept those tapes and now sold them for tons of money. Hey, this is how I'm trying to help you make money here, for God's sake. Anyway,
always a side hustle. Always a
side hustle, Al. Hey, so from that internship, so how did that then catapult you into your first gig?
Well, interesting. Like I said, I bounced around a lot. As you all know, you think there came a point where it's I think I might be able to get on air like this. I think that's the next phase of what happened. Can I get on air? Can I, do updates, whatever. But I remember what really happened then before I even pursued on air work in radio. But I freelanced for ESPN for quite a while, and I just did some odd jobs. Just after I got out of college, I was a hustler. So I waitressed, for a while. I knew that I wanted to pursue something in sports at this point. Still hadn't completely landed on what it was, but through my time at the Brewers, I absolutely started networking with the different producers, Sunday Night Baseball producers, guy by the name of Fred back in the day. And every time they came to Milwaukee, every time they came to Chicago, I was only 70 miles away. So whether they were at the Cubs or the White Sox, they called on me. I hopped in a car. I think I made $75 a game. I mean, it cost me more to do everything. But whatever. And then from that, I got, again, the word, I just started hustling and I started doing, ABC Golf. In fact, one of the cool things that happened is I got to be on that team when Tiger, his first professional, appearance was at the Milwaukee GMO, the Greater Milwaukee Open, and I was part of the ABC team. We come in about a week early. We laid, and I lived there, so I was working. I was hanging around. But I actually by that time I was at a radio station called WISN. It was a second in command behind the WTMJ was the flagship of the Brewers, the Bucks. I had worked there for a couple of years as well, but by this time, so actually I'm kind of lying. I was already into my career a little bit when that ABC thing happened, because I did have to take off from work at WISN, where I was I was a board op. I was the producer of the afternoon drive time sports talk show there. And so I was producing and I was doing some on-air work. I was filling in for traffic. I was doing the Marquette women's color commentating at WISN. And at that, we came in for, the GMO. I got opportunity to do that. My station supported that. And so I was kind of dipping my toe in a bunch of little pots at that point in my career.
Ellen, I don't want to gloss over this part of your story because it's important, because I could hear people out there saying, oh, great, you got this job and you got that job and you got that job. Like, how, right? So, I mean, this is a story about your journey and chasing your dreams, but people are trying to follow in your path. So is it relationships? I mean, you talked about the gift of the gab. I mean, you're talking about I met so-and-so and then I got that job and I met so-and-so. I mean, you're obviously a good person to work with because people are around you and they're trying to work with you and make make things, they know you're reliable. They know you're good at what you do. So is it all just relationships at that point? You said you were hustling. What does hustling mean? Are you cold calling? Are you looking at lists of opportunities? Like how does that work?
Well, that's really great. That's a great question. I when I was, like I said, just to go back to the brewer thing. Again, no one told me to go down and start talking to the guys, but I did. And so I'm not afraid to do stuff like that. I'm also, even in my basketball playing, I was the girl, I grew up out in the burbs I didn't grow up in the inner city of Milwaukee. I grew up out in the burbs. I was going to a Catholic high school, but I would go into the inner city and I would play basketball in the playgrounds with both men and women that were not my peers or neighbors in my neighborhood because I wanted to get better. And in fact, true story on that. The head coach at the high school that I went to my senior year, where we won state and all that, he had said, you always have to play. To get better, you have to play with people who are better than you. He encouraged us to play with guys. And this is, I don't know if this is all pre, everybody getting weird about being told what to do. That coach was like, you guys want to do something? You got to play with the fellas. Go, play in the playgrounds. And I did that. I took him at his word. So fast forward, that mentality of, I'm not afraid to be an outsider. I'm not afraid to try stuff that might be against the norm. So to answer your question, when I got the opportunity the reason I got the opportunity is because for even being involved with ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, the Brewers called me and said, hey, ESPN's coming to town, blardy blar, can you be here? I got there. And even in that opportunity, I went into the truck. I talked to the Chiron guys. I introduced myself. And also just as another sidebar, Larry, you have to remember that I was a standout athlete in that market as well. So people followed my journey. I was a very unique person that had played basketball I started as a freshman, I told you, freshman, sophomore, junior at a high school further outside of Milwaukee for various reasons. There was coaching issues. I then transferred my senior year to Pius. That got a lot of attention, interestingly, at that time. People followed me while I was at Pius. I replaced a girl that had been an outstanding, she was a 6'5" girl that had been an icon at that Catholic high school in downtown Milwaukee. She went on to play at Notre Dame. I came in and behind her and played, and we won state, and I went on to play, not at Notre Dame, but so I was kind of on the radar. And so when these other opportunities came up, how did I get to the radio station? How people kind of knew who I was because of my sports background in Milwaukee, if you can believe it. And so there's a little bit of that. There was some cachet with some of these things, but to have ESPN keep calling me back, to have these little hustling opportunities, I made a point to shake hands, make a presence, and I did follow up. I followed up with Fred. I sent Fred, the producer, Christmas cards at Christmas. When I got opportunities, when I got my first full-time job, seriously making $3.50 an hour as a board op, 6 days a week at a jazz station. That's where I landed at first. I was there for somewhere. Got to start somewhere. Driving my little Datsun, all the way out there, no benefits. I told him about that. I said, this is what I'm. So I did keep in touch with people, and even then, they were still calling me when they came to the market or even in a nearby market. So I never had a fear of kind of just sticking my nose into stuff. And I wanted to learn. There was times, actually, I don't think I ever shared this too. Sharpie doesn't even know this. There actually was a time that I thought I wanted to be a Chiron operator. I thought that was a cool gig. When I sat in the truck and during the baseball games, I started doing this for Bucks as well. I got some opportunities over at the Bucks arena, again, just being a little runner, doing things for the guys that were coming in from other teams. But I would sit in the truck in the off time. And before that, they told me, hey, go do this. And then I'd get out of the truck and I'd go run and do it. But I liked that Chiron. I actually kind of thought that was an opportunity, but again, radio just kept sucking me in, and I got my career really exploded through radio.
Wow, that's that's a whirlwind that you just described, and as you were going through that, part of what I started to think about, which I didn't know before, is the fact that you were a known quantity, so to speak, within the area where people knew your story. Maybe they were creating some opportunities for you along the way because
you were a big fish.
Yeah, you were a big fish in a small pond, but that's exactly where I'm headed. So eventually, you take the leap and you wind up in larger markets. I know you wind up in New York. I don't recall if there was an intermediate step, but how difficult was it for you and how scary was it for you to step out of that world where you were comfortable, you were known, you were respected by your reputation and by your story to take that leap into something new and bigger?
Well, again, so this is so cool for me to go down memory lane because I did end up leaving Milwaukee, which at the time I want to say it was about a size 33, 34 market. And the thing that propelled me, I had a good gig. I was a afternoon drive time sports talk show producer. I was doing the color commentating for the Marquette women, during the season. Obviously, they only did the home games, so it wasn't like I didn't travel for that at that point. But I had a problem. And I was doing fill-in. My voice was on the air. I was doing fill-in traffic as well for, and when I say traffic, I mean like there's an accident on I-94.
Actual traffic reports.
Exactly. When there was a live person doing that, I'm listening to the scanners and so that all happened. There came a point, I was there about 3 years. The guy who hosted the show, he would talk to me. He called me, Bunny. So he would talk to me on the air. I had a nickname but I couldn't answer him back on air. So I would push the little thing and I'd speak into his headphones and then he would regurgitate to the audience what I said. And I got to tell you guys, it just bugged me. He was great to me. It was my working relationship with Homer his name was Steve the Homer True. It was great, but it just made no sense to me why I couldn't respond back on air. So I did go to the program director at one point, and I was, like I said, I was here a couple, 2-3 years, but I finally was starting to get bugged by it. I'm getting older. I'm realizing that, hey, I've got some value here. Let's just have some fun with this. So I'm not a co-host, but when you ask me a certain question, let me please answer it on air. But the program director was having none of it. And interestingly enough, and this kind of becomes a trend throughout my career and even into my life now, I thought, screw you guys. I'm gonna give my notice. I had a little bit of a plan. There's more to that story. I did go to Atlanta. Before I gave my notice, I took a trip to Atlanta. This would have been about 90. It was before the Olympics, but the Olympics were coming in 96. So it was probably late 95, early 96 that I went to Atlanta. It was a bigger market. I brought resumes with me. I literally went to I thought I could just walk into CNN and hand out resumes to people, which is exactly what I tried to do. That didn't really work out for me, but it was also in that.
They threw you out the offices, right?
No, they did not do that. But I did realize in that moment, they already were starting to ramp up for the Olympics. And when I came back home and I thought about it, I did talk to some people who I trusted at the time. They're like, man, if you're going to try to move without a job, that is going to be a hard market. Everything's going to soar. They're going to inflate. If you don't have a gig. So I did lean back into Marquette at that point. And I asked them, do we have any alumni in Charlotte? Because I pulled out the NBA Blue Book, guys, and because I had access to all that. I was doing I was going to the other thing that was happening while I was at this radio station is they were sending me I was going to the Bucks. I was going back to the Brewers. I was getting sound bites for them. So I had a lot of little things, everything, but actually being on air, in the capacity that I had talked about when I could just answer people. So sure enough, I kind of did my research. There was an equivalent, WBT it's called here in Charlotte, and which is where I live in the outskirts of that now. And I literally gave my notice. I came to Charlotte with some money in my hand. And I did call ahead. I did call ahead to the WBT in Charlotte, told them I was moving to the market, sent my resume, told them that this is what I had been doing. So they did know and they did ask me to come, when I got settled, to come in for an interview. I did all that. They offered me an overnight board op position. I took it just because I thought, let me get my foot in the door. I never had to do the overnight board op position because Michelle Tafoya, who had been the afternoon drive time person with the male doing the sports talk show, she left the Charlotte market to go to wherever, I guess, I don't know, New York, CBS. I don't remember where she went. This was 96, late 96, June, halfway through 96 at this point. And they called me back, because I also had a demo tape at that point that I had submitted to them as well. And there you go. I literally replicated my life from Milwaukee. Again, afternoon drive time sports talk show host, producer for the talk show host. But he let me on the air. I became his sidekick. And then the Panthers kind of became, their franchise opened up here, and we were back off to the races. And so I was covering sports. I was in the locker rooms. I was getting sound bites, but I was on air as well.
How long were you in the Charlotte market for?
Dude, I was there for literally almost 13 months to the day.
All right. So what point during that 13 months did you say to yourself, I want to move to a bigger market, and that being New York? Or did that even enter your mind at any point?
Absolutely didn't. I was loving my life in the Carolinas. The reason I came to New York was because the afternoon drive time sports talk show host that I was working for was he was a former New York citizen. He'd been at Gardner Webb. Gardner Webb that's down. He was a basketball guy. He came to the Carolinas. Gardner Webb is down here, but he had been involved. He was a New Yorker. He looked like a New Yorker, as they say in the South. And I did too. I didn't speak like a New Yorker, but the Southerners know when infiltrators come to the marketplace. He was from New York. I was from Wisconsin. But he would always have on, remember, we did not have a baseball team. There was no baseball team here. And so he always had, he had Sweeney Murdy. We had Sweeney Murdy on during the baseball season on the regular, who came on and talked about the Yankees. And that is how, so I got Sweeney. Then all of a sudden through that, I started getting Mike Breen on the air. We literally were in the Carolinas, but because this was a New Yorker doing sports talk, and there's a lot of Northerners and people from other places that have emigrated, if you will, to the Carolinas. So it worked. It really worked. And it was along that time that Sweeney, one day when I was calling to get him on, Sweeney Murdy, who was at WFAN at that time, told me he was leaving and he was going to WIP in Philadelphia. And he said, "Hey, Elle, you should apply for this job. They're going to be looking for somebody." It never occurred. I would have continued to stay doing what I was doing. It was Sweeney that put that bug in my head.
All right. So just so everyone knows, Sweeney Murdy was for many years, for about 30 years, he was the beat reporter for the New York Yankees for WFAN in New York, was a colleague of mine and Ellen's, and now actually is over at MLB Network. So if you ever wonder who Sweeney Murdy is, or if you have MLB Network, he is actually one of their big baseball contributors now for MLB Network. So he's a longtime guy in the industry, good guy, one of the really good guys out there. So Elle, so now the story has to be, who was it that got you into New York? Because I know this is a good story.
So he puts that bug in my ear, and I think, all right, well, what do I got? I'm single. What do I got to lose? I do submit the resume. And as I wait for that, along also, remember, I told you that Mike Breen for the New York Knicks at the time, play-by-play. They would come down and play the Hornets. And at one particular, he was on the air. He would always come on when they were in town from his hotel. And on this one day I said, "Hey, I'm coming to the game tonight. I'll stop by and see you." Now, I'd never met Mike Breen. And I go to press row at the Charlotte Coliseum at that time. And I see the place where the guys from the other team are going to be sitting courtside. And I walk up to this very handsome black gentleman who happens to, I now know, be Walt Clyde Frazier. And I say to him, "Hey, do you know who Mike Breen is? Is he around?" That became the running joke for ever, that Ellen Belk had the audacity to ask one of the greatest, icons in NBA history who Mike Breen was. Mike Breen never let me live that down.
As a basketball player yourself, you have no idea who one of the great players of all time is.
Hey, I was
Good job.
No, I was zoned in on Glenn Rivers. Come on, Doc Rivers was my guy. I didn't have any. But yeah, anyway, so what it really was is Breeny, again, I did the same thing with Breen as I had done in years past. Sent him Christmas cards. Same with, Sweeney. I definitely networked in the old school ways of literally writing something on a card and putting it in the mail, one of those ways. So old school. So yeah, and sure enough, I got the call, and I really always knew that Breeny did call me and tell me. We did talk on the phone. He said, I'm going to put in a good word for you, kid, and whatever. And that's how I think between both Sweeney and Breen, that's how I probably got the foot in the door. But when I flew. So yeah, Mark Chernoff, the program director at, WFAN, called me. They flew me up. I flew up there for literally I was going in and out in a day. And I came into this Kaufman Astoria studios, and I had, this interview, and voila, before you knew it, about a couple months later, I was packing up a moving truck and moving to New York. That's how fast. That was 97. 97 is when I landed.
It's a pretty good foot in the door, I got to tell you. So you're hired by them. What did they hire you to do? What are your responsibilities? How did you ease into the New York City way of life?
Is there an ease?
Yeah.
It's easy, right?
Yeah. I was 4 to midnight. My shift was second shift, 4 to midnight. New York was overwhelming for like a hot minute. I was a fish to water too, Sherry. Even you have to, before I knew it, my whole entire wardrobe was black. I'm speaking, everything I owned was black, clothes, and I was speaking faster, and I never really lost that. But I was a fish to water. I didn't realize that it was meant to be, quite frankly, but 4 to midnight. So
now you're a big fish in a fish in a bigger pond.
Yeah.
Did you feel like a big fish? Did you still have that confidence, or were you kind of like, hey, you know what, I gotta shift gears here a little bit and pivot?
Well, I had swagger because listen, at this point I'm like 28 years old. I had some swagger. And by the way, I want to also say I tried out for the Charlotte WNBA women's franchise when I still lived here the year before. So I did not make the team. That was in 96. I did not make the team. But again, I remember I was at the flagship station for the Hornets here in the Charlotte market, and they offered me the opportunity to do color on WBT radio for the Charlotte Sting women's basketball team. I had that opportunity on the table simultaneously as I was interviewing for the position at WFAN, and I literally it was a tough one because I had had never dreamt of being in the New York market. But then I had the thought like, yeah, but wow, this is too good to pass up. So when I got there, I did kind of come with some swagger. I did now know people on, I had NBA, I knew people at the Bucks. I knew people at the, the Hornets. I you know what I mean? So it wasn't like I had never done anything.
Sure. I mean, it's not an environment for the meek, right? You really do have to assert yourself.
I want to interject for 1 second. So you have the opportunity to be the analyst on radio or TV. Which did you say?
It would have been radio. Yep, radio.
On radio for the WNBA team, which is a locked in on-air position in theoretically a meaningful spot. But you chose to go to New York instead into a much, I would think, riskier set of circumstances. Why did you make that choice?
To be honest with you, it's not like I was salty because I didn't make the team but I got to be honest with you. It wasn't it was experimental. It wasn't like it was going to be game-changing dollars for me. Not saying that WFAN, I didn't make $1 million when I walked in the door there either. None of us did, but I guess really truthfully, Larry, it was probably just, this is the unknown, which was more appealing to me, quite frankly. The fact that there's more sports, there's more opportunity. I ended up getting, when I got to New York, so yes, I did the WFAN, and I was there for over 3 years, but I also got published there. I did freelance writing, always the hustler, guys, always the hustler. So I got published in New York Life magazine. I was doing, I just wanted it all, I guess. Now, once I had the flavor of all this and I realized that there was options, that's when I say I was kind of a fish to water in New York, because There was, if you don't listen, what is the saying? If you can't make it here, you can't make it anywhere. If I was going to go there, I was going to make this work because, and it was hard, especially when I was in between jobs. And again, you're just living on a wing and a prayer and trying to get back in. But I was going to make it work. And I really liked New York. Quickly, I really liked New York. I was not afraid of New York. But back to Shay's point, I did love going home to the beach. I had the best of both worlds. I slept, when I opened my window in my apartment, I could hear the ocean. When I got on the Long Island Railroad and got off at Penn Station, I loved that too. So it kind of just really worked for me.
Well, let's talk about some of your responsibilities when you were over at the Fan, because it wasn't simply sitting in the studio, cold calling guests, because you did have other responsibilities. You were out in the field, and that was part of the real joy of your time over at FAN. So what else aside from just being in the studio from 6 to midnight did you do? Because that's really where you began to shine.
Yeah, I was so the first opportunity, I can't remember what came first, but I was also the Sunday Giants game day producer. So when Bob Papa was on the air, I'm in his headset, hey, 10 seconds to commercial, read this spot. So I did get that opportunity. Was it year one? I don't remember, but it certainly was by year two. So I was the game day studio producer for the New York Giants. Along with that, then I also became the Monday night coaches show producer. For ultimately, it happened for both the Giants and the Jets. So the Giants, if you can remember, back in those days, we were at that steak joint, which was on the first year I did it. The New York Giants, we were in the first floor, if I'm not mistaken, of the whatever steakhouse that was where 9/11. We're in the World Trade Center. We ended up going to the New York. Or maybe that was first. I think we did the New York Sport Club. New York Sport Club might have been first, actually. I don't even know if that existed. Right, yeah. I think that was the first location because I think I only did, because I remember I had to call the limos, get the limos there for the guys, any of the guests. I got the players, from Jason Sehorn to Tiki, whatever. I was that. So I was the Giants game day producer and the Monday night coaches show, which was, Fossil back in those days. Along the way, then, the Jets were, their coach's show was at the Garden City Hotel out on Long Island. Well, hello. Of course, he gives me, I got that task as well. And the way they work that out, I don't even know how that's up to the program people, but every other week is how that works. So every Monday I was somewhere. I was either in the city doing the Giants or the following week out in Long Island doing the Jets. And I had that opportunity to do that as well. And so that's the kind of stuff. Now, again, I'm getting to know the players more. And of course, making sure, when I at some point I started to get to know front office people, and, it did help grow my network and just expand the Ellen energy, if you will.
All right. So another piece of disclosure here is that I left WFPN in 1999. All right, and Ellen was still there. What year did you? Let's jump ahead a little. What year did you leave FAN?
It would have been once again when I was slighted, when I didn't get the Giants beat reporter. I told you everything I've already done, and Billy, the former football player Billy Taylor, had been the Giants beat reporter and goes up to camp and all that. And when he left to go to another radio station, I was a lock to get that. The guys all knew me, the team knew me. I didn't get it, and so once again. In Ellen style, I felt when you feel disrespected at levels like that, I don't know what it was, but I thought, no, this is BS. I have earned this right. So I left. And so I would have left Tushar. I will tell you this, it would have been sometime in 99, but I again got picked up at IATA Internet Radio. And so I was not unemployed terribly long, but I was unemployed several months probably.
What year was that roughly?
End of 99, because by 2000 we were on the air at IATA. Mm-hmm.
All right, so I had a gig at a place called WLIB, and I was a sports producer there, and I actually had to build out a small reporting staff. And one of the people that I actually was able to hire was my good friend Ellen, at that time Ellen Roberts, to cover the Jets because she was out on the island. It made perfect sense. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever seen the 30 for 30 documentary, The Two Bills, with Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick. Either of you?
I probably protested it because I didn't like the subject.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
Nonetheless, there's a scene in the documentary where Ellen is in class with Bill Belichick while he's with the Jets during a defensive let's say tape session, where you can see Ellen in the classroom, and I think there's one where they're on the field as well, where they're going through the drills for all the reporters. It's pretty cool. So
Sounds
pretty cool.
horrible.
That was awesome.
As a native Buffalonian, it sounds absolutely, positively horrible.
Well, I'm so glad you can keep a clear head, and even all these years later. Good to see that you don't carry a grudge, Larry.
All right. So, Elle, let's talk about the big change. Let's talk about the big change, right? So, you've been kicking ass in sports journalism in New York. You've been moving up the rank. You've been moving up the ladder. You've been moving up the rank. But then, and tell everybody, the big thing happens in New York, 9/11. That was a big moment for you. What happens then?
It was just to rewind just 2 seconds is I at that point now I was on air at IATA Internet Radio for those people. That was almost the precursor. You would listen through your computer. It was the precursor to what now ultimately became Sirius XM, satellite radio. But we had this .com upstart that I was a part of, and a gentleman by the name of Don LaGreca and I did a show from 9 to midnight. On Christmas Eve. That would have been, it barely was a year. And Christmas Eve of 2000, we were told, this is your last show. We were the first round of people to get booted out as the .com era was crashing around us. So, but they still paid me out. I still did work. I was still hustling. I was still writing. I was got a lot of speaking engagements at that point. As you can imagine, I was a chick who in sports, and I was asked to speak here and at this Kiwanis thing and stuff like that. Everybody wanted behind the, scene baseball stuff about, sports and being a woman in sports. So I was able to still kind of cobble together, but I was technically unemployed in my mind. I had all these side things going, but nothing solid, nothing full-time with benefits or anything when 9/11 happened. And so I had been, that had been about 6 months. For the first 3 months, I was still collecting the .com money, but then that stopped. And for another couple, 3-4 months, it was just Ellen Belk hustling hard and living off of her savings. And it was 9/11 when I realized I sat there. It was as of course, as a citizen of all of us, if we were all citizens of the state, everyone was impacted in a certain way. And it was kind of I thought to myself, I had an aha moment, like, damn, I never expected to be in New York. And by God, I was hosting a show in New York. And I've had this great experience, this great 5-year journey, or however many ever years, it felt longer, but however, I did things that I never dreamed I would be able to do. And I just thought it was time. I need to go back to home base, and I'm not sure I'm going to stay in this market. Meaning in the sports industry. And what the clincher was for me is I kind of packed up. That took a longer, things that didn't happen like overnight. I had to get things organized. What's going to happen? But when I was doing my research back in Milwaukee, because I'd been out of the market now for many years. Y'all, the same freaking people. That program, FYI, true story, in the year 2023, that program director who wouldn't let me on the air, which is why I left WISN to begin with, he's still the program director at that freaking radio station. Can you believe that? So when I left New York and came back to Milwaukee to kind of regroup and recalibrate, I knew pretty quickly that I was going to pivot because the same players were literally in the same positions in all the different areas of the different radio stations. And I thought, you know what? Not for nothing. I'm better than all you people. I'm not going backwards. I'm going forward. So that was kind of my mindset. So I specifically took a beat and I thought, listen, I'm published. I can speak. I can craft a story. I've broken stories in tense situations. I've interviewed people. I'm not afraid of people. I think I can be, this is what is in my head. I would make a great spokesperson for like a hospital network. I didn't even know what I was thinking, but I will tell you this, for for some reason, call it divine intervention, possibly, I had the forethought of thinking, I need to be in healthcare. Literally, it could have actually been, I had no connection to healthcare. I had no one in my family that worked in healthcare. I had never really dealt with healthcare. Half of my career, I didn't have healthcare in radio. So for some reason, it just came to me that this is a more solid industry. People need care. So maybe you won't get, your show won't get canceled, if you will. You know what I mean? So I made the conscious effort to use my skills and talents and try to pursue that avenue.
So it was thinking about healthcare as a market of opportunity that was stable, that had obviously a lot of growth potential, as crazy as that sounds. So you looked at it as a person trying to market their skills towards an area that seemed like an area of opportunity versus a passion pulling you in that direction. That's correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
So once you identified that as an area that you wanted to pursue, what steps did you take to create a presence for yourself?
I'm sending resumes out to I'm going into looking up where a job's happening. And interestingly enough, I probably figured out pretty quickly, they don't put hospital spokesperson in the want ads. That wasn't a thing. So I started anything that had to do with even writing. I started interviewing for some public relations type stuff. Again, I'm thinking, I made it in New York, people. I can make it anywhere. I mean, that's what the cockiness of me, that competitive, I don't sit on the sideline kind of gal. That's kind of what was, that was the blood, coursing through my veins. But I will. Well,
yeah, and with sports, you knew everything about sports. You know nothing about healthcare. Like how are you making yourself?
It's got to be tough to punch through. Yeah.
Well, to your point, I probably didn't think that angle out well, because every resume I sent out, it made sense. It made sense in my head. Giants game day producer, WFAN, #1 sports talk station in New York, beat reporter.
You do great at a hospital.
Haven't had health care in 20 years.
It makes perfect sense.
Perfect.
I kept thinking, I can craft a message. You guys have a breakdown in the ER lab. Let Ellen Belk get on air and talk about it. It made perfect sense to me.
I spoke to Tiki Barber, for God's sake.
I had Del Harris of the New York Lakers on speed dial. Come on, people. People know me. So that being said, though, yes, of course, probably not the brightest bulb moment in the pack. But what ended up happening is I figured, okay, this isn't working. Interestingly enough, I interviewed with the Cancer Centers, Treatment Centers of America for a media position and Cancer Center Treatment Centers of America. I don't know if they still exist, but that was a thing back in the day. And I would have had to move to Illinois. I mean, I got down to the final 2 or 3 candidates, but I will tell you, it became very quickly obvious to me. The last couple interviews I had, when the guy sitting across from me was the vice president of whatever, and he just kept asking me to tell him more about Bill Parcells and what kind of guy was he like and what was it. I thought to myself,
horrible person. Horrible. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I thought to myself, I'm not going to freaking get this job. These people just wanted to meet the girl that sent this resume.
That's it too, right? You hit the nail on that. The resume is a WFAN essentially resume, right? I mean, there's nothing health related on there.
It's a conversation piece.
Yes.
So I took literally. So this goes on for several months. 6 months earlier, I'm, covering the game when Jeff Van Gundy was hanging on the leg of Alonzo Mourning. And 6 months later, I walk into a skilled nursing home. I saw a want ad for $11 an hour for an activity assistant. Didn't know what any of that meant, but I knew it was healthcare. And so I go in there. I'm literally hired on the spot. That should have been the first key that, wow, this how hard could this be? I mean, how desperate are you people?
We got one.
but exactly. But I got the gig. I didn't know how to spell the word Alzheimer's. Didn't know, other than, having spent time with my grandfather when he lived in a nursing home, and my mom, would take me, and I candy striped for to get some good points to go to college, whatever. But I was not, you've already heard my life story. So I wasn't like I was hanging out at the Blue Light Special Cafe, waiting for the senior citizens to walk in. So but the way I looked at it, and I was very conscious, I knew this was going to be culture shock. But Ellen Belk, thought, if I just get my freaking foot in the door, I will figure this out. And that really, I swear to God, I literally talked to myself that way. Like, I don't care. This is $11 an hour. This is a place that delivers healthcare. I'll figure it out. This isn't my last stop. This is my starting point. And that's really the mentality that I went in to that particular position with.
You've now got your foot in the industry. How did people take to your style? Obviously, you're super high energy, right? And I can. If anything has come out of this conversation, you are super high energy. So, how did that go over with people in the industry? Before we go into that aha moment where you said, "This is my calling."
Healthcare was very, very unwelcoming to me. One of my second or third jobs, I then became a director at an adult day. Let me just say that. And that's when that really hit me, because adult day services where elders come for the day so that their caregivers get respite and then they go home at the end of the day. I became a director there in like a hot minute. But the reason I bring that part up is because Tushar, it was then that I realized, wow, there are actually people rooting against me. I had a boss that, there were people that were criticizing that I didn't know anything. Like, well, how is she a director? She doesn't even know how to spell Alzheimer's. But they also weren't taking me under, they weren't appreciative of, this is yet another person that's in our industry. Now let's help her then. So it was kind of a double-edged sword. And let me just also say, and I am a woman, obviously, but as you've learned about me now, most of my life, I have been surrounded by men professionally in sports. I often was the lone female in many locker rooms that I covered in every market that I worked. So I clearly have some more testosterone than the average gal herself. So this healthcare, and it kind of to this day remains, but especially back now in 2001, 2002, it is a very heavy female-driven industry. So that was, I didn't know how to play in the sandbox with girls because I was a chick that wore sweatpants to Jets camp. And I, hung out in the locker room with, Keyshawn Johnson and, shot the crap around. I swore like a truck driver, all of that. So I fit it. I blended in that universe. I did not blend well in the female driven world of healthcare in those early days.
So you had a lot to learn, obviously. How did that happen? You're not getting shared with, nobody's there helping you. You're kind of what? I mean, you have guidelines, but you're kind of making it up as you go along, flying by the seat of your pants. Like, how do you educate yourself to get up to speed? I mean, it had to happen because you've been in the industry now for countless years.
Yeah. All of the above. I will tell you, it made no sense to anybody and anyone listening to this story is like, oh my gosh, what is this transition? But I absolutely implored all of my investigative reporting skills. I didn't know I had to research some of the players before I spoke to them so I could sound like, you can't just go into a locker room and start talking to people. I had to know who I was talking to. There's research that has to go on, blue books that have to be read, to find out which team is what and how this all works together in all these sports. I did that. I employed those same skill sets in senior living. Now, of course, the internet is a thing. I'm researching things. I'm trying to figure out who the players are, who are the great healthcare providers. I landed in this first job in a place in a nursing home, but now healthcare is so broad. I could have gone into breast cancer stuff. I could have gone into a clinic. I just happened to get my very first job at a place where there were elders, but I started to kind of teach myself. But then truthfully, along the way, once again, I got a male boss. My third boss was a male boss at a very large healthcare contingency out of the home base was out of Chicago, but I got an opportunity to work at one of their Milwaukee-based properties, and he saw something in me. To this day, I credit him. I tag him when I brag about, stuff online. This is the man that saw something unique in me, and he invested in my success, you guys. He sent me to Rush Medical in Chicago. I got continuing education credits in Alzheimer's and dementia care, and that's when things really started to change for me, because I realized this is my calling. This is
that's exactly what I was just going to. At any point, are you saying to yourself, "I've made a huge mistake. I need to get back into sports," or did you find your calling? Is this like all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and wow, this is where I'm meant to be?
Yeah, no, I have aha moments along the way, but yes, I realized that this big voice. I made good money. That .com money. That was the most I'd made at that time. I made good money using this voice. I still make good money using this voice. I'm now advocating for people, none of who will probably ever remember my name. And when I say, I mean the residents. I now am an advocate for people who have cognitive decline. Even in all my consulting work, that's all I do now. I'm a board certified dementia educator, certified dementia practitioner, and then I have the holistic dementia expertise. Those are all the things that I've racked up now over the years, and I continue to never forget. It was fun to interview Dennis Rodman. It was fun to, know Michael Jordan. These are all fun, and that's great. But now I can remember almost not every single resident to a person, but I know the names, the stories of the people whose lives I touched when I worked in the local levels, and then even when I got into national positions, I'm now leading people and trying to again infuse Ellen energy in them across the country, and it felt good. The voice continues to be my calling card, but now it is for something that's much grander than what what I ever thought I was capable of.
All right, so let's talk about how that plays into Keep in Mind. So what exactly is Keep in Mind, and how does your current journey now work into that?
Well, it's my company. And there came a point where, like I said, I authored the manual originally, and that's now kind of the whole company got built around that originally. So it's, I will say this, I almost feel like I need to rebrand now, because COVID has really there's so many things that have changed in the healthcare system now, guys. And so I specialize in dementia care training. So this manual is an operational system. It's literally a playbook. Again, I always weave in my sports background. I speak sports even in my dementia care. Hey, it's a playbook. We're a team. It takes a team of people to care for people with dementia. I've always got that thread, because that is still part of my personhood. I can't deny my athletic background and my love of sport, so that's another thing that makes me unique. It's no one in healthcare talks like that, because they're very there's a lot. I kind of live in the gray, you guys. I live in the gray area. Healthcare can be very black and white. So I continue to be a unicorn. I'm a little bit, if you can believe it, this is a thing. I can't believe I'm about to say this. I am a little bit of an influencer in the dementia care space, because my voice is so unique. I'm not your norm. So how it plays into that is I've leveraged all these, relationships. I am an asset to organizations that don't have a plan. And they, but one thing that is, like I said, about COVID and what's decimated the healthcare industry isn't well known in investing in the success of their employees. You know what I mean? It's right. It's not an industry. They will burn and churn. And I find that it's almost alarming, actually. And in fact, it's actually gotten worse. People, the fact that somebody sent me to Rush Medical and spent how much ever he spent, I had to do it over a course of six weeks. I'd go every weekend, and I walked away with 42 continuing education credits in a leadership in dementia care units certification. I stayed in a hotel. I can't even imagine There's not a healthcare provider alive right now that would do that in the climate that we're operating in right now. So I'm in a constant state of pivot, you guys. And that's why again, in the midst of all this, people are not spending the 5 figures that that it takes to get Ellen's 360 system and Ellen's ongoing consulting. So once again, we pivot. That's how the creation of the Kim Academy. Kim is the acronym for keep in mind. The Kim Academy online dementia education platform has been launched, and it's evergreen and ever growing right now. So because it can be at a lower price point. I'm on demand. I record stuff. So I don't have to fly to your community and be there in person. So the return on investment is, you're still going to have to invest a little bit, but the price point is significantly lower. I'm still speaking of my team. I'm still training with my team's, stuff. It's still my manual. I'm just kind of deconstructing the manual and doing online learning with it now, if that makes any sense.
How dire is the problem that we see now with an aging population, not just in the U.S., but globally? How dire of a problem is this?
To answer that question, Tushar, boomers, baby boomers, but they like to be called boomers, by the way, started turning 65 at a clip of 10,000 boomers a day, started turning 65 in the year 2011. So in a mere 7 years, by 2030, the 65, and over demo is projected to be at 74 million. Now this is just in the United States. That will be 20% of our population will be in 2030, 7 years from now, will be over, will be of that 65 and over age group. The boomers in America are not unique to America. That same statistic, now obviously statistically, whether, different, China's got different, population numbers, but that same dynamic is also happening from India to China to America to Brazil. That influx of older adults is here and ever growing.
But culturally, it is different in other parts of the world, right? I mean, I think in other parts of the world, don't they usually take the elder people back to the home and take care of them rather than put them in a place? I feel like in the United States, we're very quick to, I'm going to put them in a home, or I'm going to, it's a different cultural thing, isn't it?
100%. We lag behind. It's especially Japan and China, Australia. From a dementia perspective, these are some of the places that they build dementia communities. And when I say communities, it's not like a lock them up, throw them away. It's like housing where there's a grocery store in there and people with dementia are living and moving freely. Yes, it's secured and all that. I mean, I could go on and on about that. But yes, to answer your question, the United States does lag behind. But I will tell you there's a seismic shift. And this is one of the good things that came out of the pandemic. These boomers who tend to be, remember, for a long time, we had the greatest generation and or the silent generation living in senior housing. And these boomer children, I've got 4 boomer siblings. I'm a Gen Xer, but I've got 4 older siblings and they're boomers. These boomers, honey, they do not want what we're selling in America. They do not want to be locked up in 4 walls and 2 hots and a cot, or whatever the saying would be. I mean, so so there's a lot of opportunity in healthcare in general, home health services, day programs, it's exponentially expensive. You're looking at $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month in these private places. And that's just on the front end. So the boomers they're not buying what we're selling. And so, and quite frankly, here's the sad part. Like I said, this is my 22nd year. We've known this age wave was coming. This tsunami, silver tsunami, as many call it, we've known for a decade that this was happening. And this is an unfortunate thing. The senior housing market did not pivot and plan. Everybody keeps, again, that saying, kicking the can down the road. And here we are. So there's going to be other opportunity. There's going to be more growth, and you're going to start to see unique growth that isn't just you must live here 24/7. There is some fun innovation that's happening to keep people safer in their home, which is or congregate living where you can come and go, apartments where apartment living where it's 55 and older, and then there is some staff on site, but then they harness that energy with other ancillary services. There's gonna be some piecemealing, if you will, to keep these boomers happy, for sure.
Well, the very good news is that they have you on their side as an advocate. You know, the fact that you've been able to learn about yourself and develop your communication skills in the way that you have, and to then use those. I don't want to say for good, because I'm sure the sports work that you were doing before was also very good, but to plug yourself into something so critically important for the more important part of your career, let's say, is really admirable. So, you know, Ellen, if people want to learn more about you and to learn more about the Kim Academy, where should they go and where should they look?
Well, my website is Keep in Mind Inc., and Inc. is inc.com. So Keep in Mind Inc. And then the Kim Academy it's got its own platform, and it's Kim, Kim, Kim Academy keepinmindinc.com. So I appreciate the opportunity of letting me get that out there. Come one, come all. We are elevating the global dementia IQ one student at a time.
Very good. Well, again, Ellen, incredible work, important work. Thank you for giving us Tushar and helping develop him for us over the years. I'm sure you played a role there.
Oh, that was hazard pay. I get hazard pay for that, guys.
Shut up. Yeah, that goes both ways, sister.
You know what? Touche, Tushar.
And thank you for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices.
Thanks, guys. It was my pleasure.
So that was Ellen Belk, who provided us with a wonderful blueprint for the art of the pivot. Tushar, thank you for bringing her to us.
I appreciate that. And there are 3 words that come to mind after that interview, which are eye-popping, surprising, and inspiring in many ways, right? So eye-popping in that, you know, how 9/11 really was such a turning point and obviously was a turning point for this country, a turning point for so many of us, but it was a real turning point for her because she saw at that moment that, you know, maybe the career that she had chosen at that point was not really fulfilling. She needed fulfillment at that point. Surprising was how she went about it, right? It was surprising that she just decided, I'll go home, I'm going to kind of start from square one again, but I'm going to be successful. And then inspiring because she became successful. She is successful in this endeavor. And not only that, but she is an advocate on such a grand scale that she is raising the dementia IQ globally in many senses, that she has now become a real spokesperson for this terrible, debilitating disease that so many millions of people are afflicted with now, whether they be young or old, so to speak. And, you know, it's important that we kind of try and get our minds around how big this problem could eventually be. And, you know, it's important to have someone like an Ellen Belk out there ringing the bell saying a real problem could be down the line, and then have someone like her say, I think I have the solution as well.
Yeah, so many inspiring parts to this story, T. You know, I have to talk a little bit about, you know, who she is as a person, though, and how playing sports gave her confidence when she was younger, and then getting the job with the Milwaukee Brewers gives her confidence to talk to people. The moxie seems to be like a common denominator throughout her whole life. And T, we talked about courage at the beginning of this episode, and you know, we talked about how there's nothing more courageous than turning your back on success to try something new, because you know you could do that. It takes a lot of courage for you to turn your back and say, let me go do this now. And she did it for something that's admirable, that's important. And I think it was that moxie that kind of got her through both things, right? And allowed her to be successful in both of these fields. So take something from that. Be confident in yourself and learn how to make those tough choices and face that fear.
And in the end, she's found her calling. Her calling wasn't to be, you know, a big-time athlete or a big-time sports producer. Her calling was to do this.
And you need to do, as you said, Larry, whatever it takes. You know, she took that job at the the elder care center, and it was certainly very different from the glamorous stuff that she was doing before, but she was willing to do whatever it took to put herself into a new game and to carry that ball forward, so to speak. So just a great story about courage, putting yourself out there, and as I mentioned, leading into all of this, the art of the pivot. So Ellen, thank you so much for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices. We also thank you for joining us. If this or another journey story inspired you to think of a friend who could be a great guest, please let us know by sending us a note via the contact page of NoWrongChoices.com. As I mentioned off the top, please support us by following No Wrong Choices on your favorite podcasting platform while giving us a 5-star rating. And then last but not least, we encourage you to join the No Wrong Choices community by connecting with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and X by searching for No Wrong Choices. On behalf of Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea, I'm Larry Samuels. Thank you again for joining us, and always remember, there are no wrong choices on the road to success. We learn from every experience.